Joe D. I've done a couple of videos prior to this, and again, it was the first and second attempt, and I kind of rushed everything. So I'm hoping this one will be a little bit smoother, a little bit more informative, and a little bit more detailed. So let's get started. So just so you know, let me preface everything I'm talking about in this video. Just so you know, I'm not a shipwright, I'm not a boat builder. I am a carpenter, however. Excuse me. I am a carpenter, however, and I have built boats. I've been working with plans. I say for the last 50 years, and as far as my experience is concerned, I'm a retired carpenter, New York City, and I worked in a cabinet shop. I was a woodworker. I built furniture professionally. And I pretty much did everything regarding carpentry. I mean, I did sheetrock roofs. The only thing I never did really was foundation work, you know, forms and stuff. But pretty much I've done just about everything. I really focused on the woodworking and the cabinet making. That's really where my field of expertise is. So anyway, with that said, I had built a couple of boats, and one of my first boats that I built was an 8-foot dinghy. So basically what I did was went online, you know, and I'm not the most, I'm pretty cheap. So what happened was I found a set of drawings for a 10-foot dinghy, but I had a boat with an 8'6" beam on it. And I was going to stick this thing on the back of the boat and go cruising around, and I have the dinghy for whatever. But I just didn't want the dinghy to hang over on each side of the boat. So I cut it down to 8 feet, which was a big mistake. Anyway, in any event, again, this was my first boat that I ever built, and I wanted it strong. This thing was built with 1/4-inch plywood from Home Depot. And what I did was I got some 18-ounce glass and epoxy, and I put a couple of layers, 3 layers on the outside and 3 layers on the inside of this thing. And I don't know if you know anything about fiberglass, but 18 ounces is pretty thick. It's pretty heavy. Anyway, this boat was supposed to be 50, 60 pounds when completed. And when I got through with it, it was easily triple that. So that boat I gave away. I don't have any pictures of it. Don't ask for pictures. It wasn't my finest hour, but I will say this. It was a great learning process. I learned a lot of stuff. I made a lot of mistakes. I spent a lot of money on epoxy and fiberglass, and it didn't go to waste because I did learn a lot. I learned a lot from it, and which I thought was pretty good. I mean, listen, you got to start somewhere. You know, what's the old expression? Even Mario Andretti, the great Formula One race car driver, had to back out of his driveway for the first time at one point in his life. So that was pretty much my backing out of my driveway experience on the first boat. In any event, let's see. My second boat was a 19-foot Downeast style boat. So what happened was I had a book, again, not the most extravagant person on the planet. I bought a book, John Gardner's Small Craft, and in the book, I'd say about 3/4 of the way through, he has a 19-foot workboat. It's got a round chine on it. It doesn't have sharp chines. It's got a curved chine. So it's a semi-displacement hull. And what I did was I copied the lines from the book, and I built that. And that was cold molded. I don't know if you're familiar with cold molded, but basically again, I'm not the most extravagant person. Just give me a second. What I did with that boat was I had an old deck that I tore apart. All right, you can laugh if you want. I had an old deck that I tore apart, and I took the 5/4 by 6 decking, and I pushed it through my bandsaw, and I made 1/4-inch by whatever, 5 1/4-inch strips out of it. And I cold molded the hull with that. So when you cold mold something, I made the stations, I set it up, and I stripped the mold with the stations. I stripped it longitudinal, meaning front to back. I stripped it. And what I did was I glued the second layer on top of that on a diagonal, on a 45-degree diagonal. So it was pretty much like this. So when everything dried, after everything was said and done, this thing was one solid piece of plywood. It was solid. And I built that. I bought a 90 horsepower motor. I bought a used motor and I tried to get it running and all of that. And I took it apart and I rebuilt it and this and that. It needed CDI and all this other bull. And I ended up, I just gave it away. And I bought a brand new motor. You got to figure, you're out in the water. The last thing you want is something that's suspect. It's not 100% reliable. So I ended up giving the motor away. The boat we used for a couple of years. I bought a brand new 90 horsepower Mercury motor. It was pretty good. It ran pretty good. 90 horse on a 19 foot. Everybody was saying you need at least 150, 200 horse. No, not really. It's a semi-displacement hull. It's not designed to go fast. So what it does is it planes and it displaces water as it goes through the water. Like a sailboat, it pushes the water off to the side as it goes through. So it's not designed to go fast. So you don't need a lot of horsepower for a motor, for a hull in that configuration. In any event, it was fine. This thing was really it was really pretty good. I really couldn't complain. We loved it. Me and my wife, we really loved this boat. The Regal, I had a cabin cruiser that we had bought. That became a boatominium, and we hung out. We used to go to the marina Friday nights. We'd spend the night, Saturday all day, and then Sunday afternoon we'd come home. So every weekend during boating season, we were on vacation and we were on the boat, and we had waterfront property, and it was fucking awesome. We really enjoyed it. And but that boat was the go-to boat. We took that boat everywhere, up and down the Hudson River. We were on the Hudson River at Haverstraw Marina at the time. And we had a lot of fun. We were up and down. We took it everywhere. It was really good. Even though it was a small boat, it was pretty seaworthy considering. Anyway, we cannibalized that boat when I decided to build this 30-foot. Actually, it's a 28-foot boat with a 2-foot swim. I incorporated the hull into the swim platform. So the hull actually extends to under the swim platform. So you got a 28-foot boat, 2-foot swim platform. Now we're talking a 30-foot boat. Well, the hull is actually 30 feet. So I went online and I found this guy, Tom Lathrop, Blue Jacket Boats. I don't know what's the story. He was pretty old at the time when I bought the set of drawings. So I don't know. I tried going on his website. It's not it's not operational anymore, and he's not responding to anybody's texts, emails, or actually there was a forum that he had, and he's not responding to any of that. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if if he passed. I'm not sure. If he did, I'm sorry to hear that. I really was very impressed with the drawing on his hull. So what I did was I needed a set of drawings for his hull. His hull was kind of like a semi-displacement hull. It was a 12-degree dead rise, which was really the pitch of the bottom of the boat. And it had a hard chine, and it was really a planing boat, and it was designed to be very, very light. Now, he claimed a 28-foot boat completed, right, before you put any stores on it, meaning groceries, electronics, gasoline, water, whatever. He's claiming this thing needs to be like 2,500 pounds. But to be honest with you, when I ordered the plywood for this thing, the crate came in and it was 2,200 pounds, the weight of the crate. So you got to figure if you used 80% of the wood, you got to figure 20% for waste. You're still talking 1,800 pounds, maybe 1,900 pounds. Just for the plywood, just for the hull. Forget about the superstructure, forget about the decking, forget about all the accoutrements, meaning the sink, the toilet, the shower, the hot water heater, the air conditioner, all that other stuff. I don't think he had planned for any of that stuff on his boat. That's why it was supposed to be so light. I think he was talking, maximum 4,500 pounds. And he was saying a 90 horsepower motor works well with this particular hull that he designed. So hence I got the 90 horsepower motor, and that sealed the deal when I saw that, but to be honest with you, I'm thinking my boat's going to be, I don't know, easily 4,000 pounds. without the stores. So I'm thinking maybe we'll try it for a season. It's not completed yet, but we're going to try it for a season with the 90. And if the 90 is not up to speed, that's a pun. We're going to go with 150 horse. I'll trade this thing in. It's only got like 100 hours on it, so I'll trade this thing in and I get 150 horse, and I'll do the rigging and everything myself. So, and that's where we're at. So basically, what happened was how I got started. Okay, so let's go to chapter 2. You like that I added the chapter, right? So okay, so chapter 2, how I got started. So I in my backyard, I set up a deck. It was 12 feet wide by 30 feet long. It's espresso. I need the buzz. It was 12 feet wide by 30 feet long, and then I framed out a tent. I actually framed it out. It was just like a regular house with a pitched roof, and I trussed everything with I framed it all out with 2x2s, and I trussed it, and we covered it with a tarp. I bought a tarp online. And I only needed this thing for a couple of years. It didn't need to be a permanent structure, so nothing was built, permanently, And I'm hoping to have this thing down by December, January, and then so I can throw a tarp over the boat, and then continue on the inside. The inside is pretty much a lot of it inside the hull, inside the cabinet, inside the decking area is pretty much done. I'm gonna have to edit all of this out. I don't know, maybe I had too much espresso. So let's just go to my, so I got gyp notes here, just so you know. I can't remember shit. And if I don't look at this, I forget, I lose my train of thought and I don't know where I'm going. Okay, so I put up the tent. We already established that. So I put up a tent, and I had to make a set of horses. And so I made a set of horses out of plywood and 2x6. And I made it the height of my table saw. This way, when I'm all done with the horses, it's not that I can't use them. I can use them with the table saw. God forbid I got something wrong I want to push through the saw. I need a set of horses. I need a horse to hold it up at one end or another. In any event, so I made up that. And then I scarfed the plywood, and he's calling for an 8-to-1 scarf. Now, on the 19-foot Downeast boat that I built from the John Gardner book, I scarfed everything 12-to-1. But he's saying 8-to-1 was fine with the plywood. Now, this boat is stitch and glue. The John Gardner boat, the 19-footer that I spoke about earlier, that was cold molded, and I explained what cold molded is. So if anybody has any issues, just rewind the video, go back and take a look and see what I said. But anyway, this thing is stitch and glue. So basically, you get a piece of plywood, you add another piece of plywood, you drill a couple of holes, and you put a cable tie, or you put a piece of wire and you tighten it up. After you get the whole thing assembled, then you spot glue it, take all your cable ties or your wire or everything out, and then you fillet and glass. You do the inside and the outside, and then that's it. And pretty much you got your hull. I mean, that really, not only, that saves a lot of time. That's also pretty strong. It's kind of like a unibody, like cars. Years ago, cars were built with a chassis and they put a body on top of it. Now everything is unibody, and they're much stiffer, they're a lot stronger, and they're much lighter. And that's pretty much the deal. I feel that's pretty, again, I'm not an engineer, but I pretty much feel that stitch and glue is kind of like unibody. It's very light, it's very strong. It's also a very quick method, to get your hull up and running. You don't have to go through all the fairing and planning and this and that. And blah. It's just a lot less work. Boat goes together a lot quicker. Anyway, so we scarfed it. So I got a video that I made, and I showed how I actually scarfed everything. So I'll squeeze that in here somehow. We'll get to it. So what I did was, after I scarfed everything, I built the hull stands, and he's calling 12 degrees for the bottom, 12 degrees again. you know. So which is pretty shallow. It's not really a deep V boat. So a deep V boat, the deal with that is, just so you know, and I know I'm going off track right now, but a deep V hull is really good in the chop. It's very good in the chop because it slices through the water. Unfortunately, it's very inefficient. You use a lot of gas. You need a lot of power to push it. But if money is no object and you need to go somewhere, you get yourself a nice fishing boat with a deep V, and you can go anywhere with that thing. Just bring a lot of gas when you go. The other thing too is, let's see, I built the stands 12 degrees, and then we started assembling the hull. Again, it was 3/4 inch plywood for the hull bottom, and it was 1/2 inch for the sides. And after that was all stitched, and I got a bunch of pictures. I'll squeeze them in here. And after that was all stitched and glued and epoxied, yeah, so what I did was I started on actually installed the stringers. Now, hear me out now. Again, I'm not an engineer. You know, I've been in the business. I'm a carpenter my whole life, and I kind of have a basic understanding of engineering. I know how things, I know how things are engineered and how well and how strong they need to be. I got a basic knowledge of engineering. Again, I'm not an engineer, so don't point your finger at me and start accusing me of anything here. But in any event, he's talking 1/4 inch stringers. So what I did with my 1/4 inch strings, I made them like TJIs or a truss joist I-beam. And pretty much what I did was, you got your 1/4 inch plywood here. We'll use this as an example. I'll use this. You got your 1/4 inch plywood, and I put a piece of 1x2 across the top. I dadoed it out, or I notched out the center of the two, and I let it in, and I glued it in with epoxy. And I did the same with the bottom, right? And I made this thing the full length, and I set it in the hull, and I glassed it down to the hull, right? And what he's saying is 1/4 inch stringers, right, running longitude, meaning front to back. 1/4 inch stringers every 7.5 inches. 7.5 inches. Usually you got a boat that's 30 feet. You may have 4 stringers. You got 2 that the engine mounts on, and you got 2 out that are outside of that, and then you got the side of the boat. Actually, you got the whole sides. But he's calling every 7 inches, so you got a lot of material there, and it's very, very strict, stiff. It's what he called a torque box. If anybody is into cars and they're familiar with what a torque box is, the torque box is basically like when you take like a U-channel, right? Like the old Ford chassis from the old Model Ts, they were U-channels, and they were very flexible. And what they would do is they would box them in, and they would weld in a piece and make a box out of it. And even though it was light gauge metal, for a frame, it was very, very structurally strong, very strong, very stiff, and very light. So it's pretty much what he is using. So once you put your deck down and you glue your deck down on top of this and glue it into the sides, the whole bottom becomes a giant, 8.5 feet by 12 foot by 20 something foot, 28 foot, actually 30 foot. Forgive me. A 30-foot torque box, and this thing is ridiculously stiff. It's very, very stiff. So at that point, after I got the stringers done, I inserted the foam. I bought the foam from Home Depot. Again, I went online. I did a lot of research, and a lot of people are using this stuff. I don't know if it's open or closed cell. I think it's closed cell foam. I'm pretty sure. And what I did was I stuffed it in there as tight as I could. I put as much in there and as much as I could. And I estimate that I have like 6,000 pounds of flotation foam in there. So if this boat exceeds 6,000 pounds in weight and it gets swamped, it'll sink. But if the boat weighs 4,500 pounds and it gets swamped, it's not going anywhere. It's not sinking because it's got 6,000 pounds of flotation under the floor. So it is not sinking. So even if the hull for some reason gets breached, or the floor, the sole of the boat gets breached and water gets in to the torque box area or under the sole, it's got all the foam in there. So again, it's not going to sink. And that was really another cool thing I really, really liked about this. You know, did I lose storage because I couldn't store anything under the floor? Yeah. But what are you going to do? Safety first. Don't forget that. That's important. Excuse me. Got to finish the espresso. Espresso. Espresso, espresso, I don't know. Last shot. All right, next. Where are we? Let's see. Oh, so now I had, so at this point, after I put the foam in it, I laid the deck, and I think I used 3/8 plywood. I don't know what he was, I think he was cool for 3/16, I'm not sure. But I went with 3/8. It was a little stiffer. But you got to remember, every 7 inches, this thing is pretty solid. You know, you only got like 7.5 inches between, you know, between joists or stringers. So you really isn't, you know, you really have a lot of structural rigidity. But what I did was, after I finished installing cabinets and the seating, what I did was I laid out 5/16 African mahogany, right? It was about 2 inches wide with 1/4 inch white oak strips. So it's kind of laid out like a teak deck would be, except it's mahogany and white oak. It's not, what did they use? Teak and holly, I guess. You can buy the plywood is teak and holly. It pretty much resembles that, but it's African mahogany. And I gave that a couple of coats of epoxy to seal it. That gets sanded, and then we'll shoot it with some polyglopethane or polyurethane. We'll get that done. But again, I'm jumping ahead. Anyway, so now I got this boat upright, right? I got the insides, I got a little glass, it's all stiffed. I threw a couple of bulkheads in. I threw the transom went in. I threw a bulkhead in where the cabin begins. So now she's pretty stiff. So now I got to flip this thing. So how do you flip it? I don't know. This thing has got to easily weigh at this point at least 2,000 pounds. And you got to remember, it's 30 feet long. So am I going to lift it up? Am I going to get 3 or 4 guys and we're going to lift it and flip it? No. So what I did was, remember, let's go back to the 19th foot Downeast. So I bought a trailer for the 19th foot Downeast, right? And when I cut the boat up and I cannibalized it and I took all the hardware, I took everything off of it. There was nothing left. The only thing left on that thing was the shell. I had the trailer. So I needed to make a rotisserie. And how did I make the rotisserie? I cut the trailer up and I welded a bunch of pieces together. I bought a couple of winches off of eBay, cheap shit, nothing expensive, you know, but they were like 2,000 pound capacity. I bought 2 of them, 1 foot front, 1 foot back. Remember, I'm estimating the entire thing at this point is 2,000 pounds. And me and my brother, I got my older brother to help me. After I welded this thing up and I attached everything, he took the front and I took the rear winch and we cranked this thing up and we lifted this thing up. Right? So we lifted it up, I shored it up, I put a bunch of 2x under there to shore it up, and then we removed the cradle that I made, or the hull stand, if you will, and I removed all of that, and then we flipped this thing upside down, right? And then we dropped it down on the deck, and that's how I did the bottom of the hull. Now remember, I didn't take the rotisserie down, I left it, because I still got to bring it back again. Again, this is how this guy, Tom Lathrop, with this Blue Jacket boats, this is how he designed this thing and he engineered it. He engineered the building process. So I followed it, you know. But, and you know what, it kind of makes sense because, you know, once you put the floor in, once you put the sole in and the stringers and all, you're kind of locked into the shape of the hull. You know, if you didn't have any of that, you just assembled it and flipped it, you know, this thing could, you know, I don't know, it could deform, you know, here and there a little bit. Anyway, so at least this way we know it was solid. So I flipped it over. We glassed the bottom of the boat. I sanded it. I checked everything with a straight edge. I didn't want any friggin' hooks in the boat, you know. I didn't want any hooks or mounds. And we glassed the whole bottom, sanded it all up, nice and smooth. I primed it with epoxy primer. And then I hit it with bottom paint. I put the ablative bottom paint on it. Now we jacked it back up. We flipped the boat over, right? And we put the boat on stands, right? I made I put a bunch of, we shored up the bottom of the boat. Too much caffeine. We shored up the bottom of the boat, and what I did was I cut out the floor to this tent. I cut the whole floor out. I left like a foot on each side of the tent, right? And we backed the trailer in, right? I took the rotisserie out, got rid of it. We backed the trailer in, and then we put the boat on the trailer and backed the trailer into the tent. So now the boat is on the trailer. Now I'm going to complete the boat on the trailer, and I give props to my son because he was the one who said, why do you want to build it on horses and then try to get it on a trailer after it's all done? And that was his idea, and we went with it, and you know what? He was right. So anyway, what I did was I finished, so I got the bulkhead, I did the front cabin, I did the superstructure on top. I made the windows. The windows, actually what I did was before I made the windows, I made the sides of the boat with the window cutouts the way I wanted it. Actually, I made it, it was a little bit off, and then we changed it after it was in. And then I made the top, the actual roof. I don't know what the nautical term is for a roof of a boat. I'm calling it a roof. And we made it. And I'm going to squeeze a couple of pictures in on how I made that. I'll show you what I did there. And then we put the roof on top. I made the frames for the windows out of white oak. I glued them in. I covered the entire inside with white oak 1/4-inch plywood, and I shot it with automotive grade clear coat polyurethane 2-part. And the cabinets, I installed the cabinets. I got pictures of all of that. And I installed the seating. We did the floor. And I'll show pictures of all of that, and I'll show you how I made some of the stuff. I'll actually show how I radius the corner, a couple of the corners on the cabinets. I radiused 6-inch radius, and I'll show you how I did that. I'll squeeze that in. I made a video of that, so I'll cut that up, and I'll squeeze little parts of that in. And the other thing, and I put Corian tops on this thing. You want Corian tops. You're going to be out in the water. What am I going to do? Use wood and fill it up with, cover it with epoxy, and then it's damp, it's dry, it's damp, it's dry. This thing starts moving, you get a crack before you know it, it's lifting. You're better off with the Corian. Anyway, so that's enough for now, and we're gonna stay tuned for part 2. Part 2 is going to be the finishing of the hull on the outside, and then once I get all of that done, then I gotta glaze it, and I still gotta do the cabin. I haven't touched the cabin and the bathroom, or the head, if you will. Again, I'm not a shipwright, I'm not a boat builder, so don't hold me to any of these. All right, I'm just a guy with a boat having a good time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, and I hope to see you on my next video.